It is a strange quirk of human psychology that a person will gladly pay $3,000 for a vacation, only to lose their absolute mind over a $5 fee. The moment people step onto a cruise ship, their baseline understanding of money vanishes. These documented cases explore what happens when the obsession with getting things for free completely overrides common sense. 1. On a brand new 4,000-passenger megaship sailing out of a major Florida port, the absolute pinnacle of onboard luxury was the exclusive Deck 16 sanctuary, a restricted area where guests could rent private, shaded cabanas for the staggering price of $250 a day. Gary, a 62-year-old retired commercial contractor from Arizona, viewed this pricing structure not as a luxury offering, but as a personal insult to his lifelong background in structural engineering. He had booked a standard interior cabin and firmly believed that paying a daily premium for temporary access to a fabric roof was a scam engineered to separate fools from their money. Ask yourself why the temporary anonymity of a massive floating hotel makes otherwise law-abiding citizens feel entirely justified in executing a petty heist. It is a fascinating psychological loop where the desire to outsmart the system completely overrides the basic concept of enjoying a vacation. Gary was not going to pay $250 for shade, but he also refused to sit in the blistering Caribbean sun with the general public. Instead, he decided to simply manufacture his own private luxury real estate. On the morning of the first full sea day, while most passengers were fighting over the standard white plastic loungers, Gary marched onto the crowded main pool deck, dragging a heavily reinforced canvas golf club travel bag. But Gary had not brought any golf clubs on this cruise. When he unzipped the bag right next to the main swimming pool, he revealed a meticulously organized, color-coded inventory of pre-cut, heavy-duty plastic plumbing pipes, several rolls of fluorescent orange industrial zip ties, and a massive olive-green polyurethane camping tarp. Ignoring the bewildered stares of the passengers around him, Gary began rapidly assembling a 6x6-foot freestanding cubic frame right in the middle of the main walkway, securing the base legs directly to the ship's metal drainage grates using thick rubber bungee cords. Once the skeleton was erected, he stretched the green tarp over the top, creating a roof that looked less like a luxury cabana and more like an emergency disaster relief tent. To complete the ambiance, his wife, Linda, was dispatched to the towel exchange station. By going back and forth 5 different times, she managed to quietly acquire 24 striped pool towels, which Gary then meticulously zip-tied to the sides of his plastic frame to create flowing, semi-private fabric walls. He even dragged over a fake potted palm tree from the buffet entrance to serve as exterior landscaping. The deck attendants were initially so paralyzed by the sheer audacity and speed of the construction that they simply stood by the bar, assuming Gary must have been a hired third-party contractor doing some sort of emergency maintenance. But the situation escalated from an eccentric eyesore to a massive operational crisis when the deck supervisor finally arrived with 2 security officers to dismantle the unauthorized shantytown. As they approached, they realized that Gary was not actually relaxing inside his homemade tent. Instead, Gary was standing outside the front flap holding a small spiral notebook, acting as a bouncer. The twist that elevated this from simple entitlement to absolute madness was that Gary wasn't just refusing to pay for his own shade. He was running a competing business. Inside the tent, 2 sunburned European tourists were happily lounging on standard deck chairs, having just handed Gary $30 in cash. Gary had spent the last hour walking around the overheated pool deck, quietly offering passengers exclusive access to his private shade pavilion for $15 an hour. He had even instructed Linda to stand inside with a plastic pitcher of complimentary ice water smuggled from the buffet, mimicking the premium butler service offered on the deck above them. Gary was actively attempting to run an unlicensed rogue hospitality franchise on the pool deck to fund his own drink expenses. When the security officers ordered him to immediately dismantle the structure, Gary did not apologize. Instead, he pulled a printed, heavily highlighted copy of the cruise line's terms and conditions from his pocket, loudly arguing that maritime law did not expressly forbid freestanding personal sun protection devices as long as they were not permanently bolted to the hull of the ship. The security team, completely unimpressed by his legal interpretations, confiscated the plastic pipes and the tarp. Gary spent the rest of the afternoon at the guest services desk, not to complain about the confiscation, but to formally demand that the cruise line compensate him for his lost projected business revenue, arguing that they had illegally shut down a competitive private enterprise in international waters. 2. On a massive European megaship sailing the Mediterranean, a solo traveler named Brenda decided that the ship's luxury spa was running a fundamentally illegitimate business model. Upon discovering that a deeply hydrating seaweed and mineral mud wrap cost $145, Brenda scoffed at the brochure, reasoning that a spa wrap was mathematically nothing more than an acidic, moisturizing compound combined with high temperatures. Refusing to be swindled by the wellness industry, she decided to source her own premium skincare ingredients entirely free of charge from the Deck 9 burger station. Around 2 in the afternoon, Brenda walked into the complimentary public steam room located near the main pool, carrying a small ceramic soup bowl she had smuggled out of the dining room. Inside the bowl was a thick, pale yellow paste she had engineered by mixing 18 individual packets of mayonnaise with 6 packets of yellow mustard and the torn-open contents of 3 complimentary green tea bags. Without a word to the other 3 passengers sitting in the thick mist, Brenda calmly sat down on the tiled bench and began meticulously painting her arms, legs, and neck with the condiment slurry. The high heat of the steam room immediately interacted with the vinegar in the mustard and the raw egg emulsion in the mayonnaise, creating a heavy, suffocating odor that strongly resembled a hot dog stand left inside a closed car in July. As the oil from the mayonnaise began to separate and drip down the humid tile benches, the other passengers rapidly evacuated the area, coughing and wiping their watering eyes. When the furious spa manager arrived 5 minutes later to investigate the smell, Brenda was lying flat on her back, gently marinating herself in the fog, and seemed genuinely annoyed at the interruption, arguing that her skin had never felt softer and that the cruise line was just angry she had cracked their proprietary spa formula with free sandwich toppings. 3. The architecture of a modern cruise ship is essentially a giant floating Faraday cage, a massive labyrinth of thick steel bulkheads, fire doors, and reinforced decking designed to block almost all external signals, which makes it the absolute worst place on Earth to try and steal internet access. But Greg, a retired accountant on a 12-night transatlantic crossing, viewed the daily Wi-Fi fee as a personal insult that he was determined to outsmart through sheer geographical persistence. Before leaving home, Greg had spent weeks reading deeply obscure maritime message boards where amateur hackers claimed that every cruise ship has invisible signal leaks, where the crew's internal operational network bleeds over into the passenger corridors. Armed with a heavy, oversized tablet and refusing to pay the $25 a day for the guest network, Greg spent the first 3 days of his vacation pacing the ship like a dowser looking for water. By day 4, Greg had finally discovered a faint, 1-bar ghost signal. Unfortunately for him, this signal was located exclusively in a small, windowless alcove on Deck 4, directly beside the heavily trafficked exhaust vents for the ship's industrial laundry facility. The temperature in this alcove consistently hovered around 95 degrees, and the air smelled heavily of commercial bleach and hot lint. But because the signal allowed him to slowly download his emails at the speed of dial-up internet circa 1998, Greg claimed this miserable square of linoleum as his permanent vacation home. Since there was no furniture in the alcove, Greg began bringing a collapsible canvas camping stool down from his cabin, setting it up right against the metal wall. When the signal fluctuated, he discovered that raising the tablet closer to the ceiling improved the connection, resulting in a daily routine where this grown man would stand on his little stool for 45 minutes at a time, sweating profusely in the humid laundry exhaust, holding his tablet flat against the ceiling panels just to check the weather back in Ohio. The room stewards pulling heavy linen carts simply began navigating around him as if he were a permanent structural pillar. Greg eventually tried to boost the connection by taping a silver-plated dining room serving tray behind his tablet, convinced the metal would act as a parabolic antenna to catch the crew's router waves. The entire operation reached its tragic conclusion on the 9th day, when the ship finally docked in the Azores for a single afternoon port call. Instead of walking off the ship to enjoy the island, find a local cafe, and use their free, high-speed internet while drinking a $2 coffee, Greg decided to stay in the boiling laundry alcove because he wanted to download a digital map of the port to avoid paying for a paper one. He spent 3 hours wrestling with the collapsing signal, completely missed the final boarding call for shore leave, and spent the entire port day staring at a loading bar, having successfully saved himself roughly $200 by voluntarily spending his luxury vacation standing in a floating utility closet holding a serving tray to the ceiling. 4. The Deck 5 photo gallery on a modern cruise ship is essentially a highly illuminated corridor lined with hundreds of glossy portraits, designed to physically trap passengers between the dining room and the theater until they purchase a physical memory. Marcus and Elena, a couple in their late 30s, had posed for a formal night portrait on the grand staircase. But upon discovering that a single 8x10 print cost $35, they experienced a profound moral objection. Have you ever noticed how the temporary anonymity of a massive floating hotel can make otherwise logical citizens feel entirely justified in executing a petty heist? Back home, Marcus would never consider walking into a retail store and shoplifting a wooden picture frame. But on the ship, stealing the intellectual property of the photography department felt like a righteous victory over corporate greed. They refused to pay for the photo, but Elena absolutely insisted on having it, which led to a highly coordinated espionage operation entirely centered around a smartphone camera. At 9 o'clock in the evening, during peak foot traffic, Marcus and Elena positioned themselves in front of their printed portrait on the wall. The immediate problem was that the gallery was lit by heavy overhead fluorescent panels, creating a massive white glare on the glossy paper that ruined any unauthorized photograph. Rather than accepting defeat, Elena instructed Marcus to stay completely still while she sourced a light-blocking device. She vanished into a nearby lounge and returned carrying a massive, leather-bound specialty cocktail menu. Acting like a lighting grip on an independent film set, Elena stood on her tiptoes, extending her arms to hold the heavy leather menu directly over the photo to cast a perfect custom shadow, blocking out the overhead glare. Marcus then pulled out his phone, leaning forward until his nose was nearly touching the wall to frame the shot. They looked absolutely ridiculous. A woman in an elegant evening gown holding a menu over her head like an umbrella, while a man in a tailored suit squatted in the middle of a crowded walkway, frantically tapping his phone screen. The specific humor of the situation peaked when one of the ship's professional photographers walked out of the back office and simply stopped, crossing his arms to watch the performance. Instead of walking away, Marcus panicked, straightened up, and loudly began pointing at the menu, pretending he was intensely analyzing the font choices of the cocktail list, with his wife completely ignoring the fact that the menu was hovering 4 feet in the air against a wall of smiling faces. The photographer did not yell or call security. He just slowly walked over, gently took the menu out of Elena's rigid hands, and softly informed them that the massive digital watermark embedded right across the center of the print would show up on their phone camera anyway. They spent 45 minutes orchestrating a tactical light-blocking maneuver, only to walk away with a blurry smartphone picture of a portrait featuring a giant opaque copyright symbol stamped directly over Marcus's forehead. 5. Most cruise lines offer a premium behind-the-scenes tour for roughly $150, guiding passengers through the bridge, the engine control room, and the massive culinary galleys. A retired manager named Thomas decided this fee was outrageous, firmly believing that purchasing a standard cabin ticket naturally granted him unrestricted access to the entire vessel. Determined to take a self-guided, completely free operational tour, he implemented a tactical disguise. On the 3rd day of the voyage, he put on a neon yellow high-visibility vest he had brought from home, grabbed a blank clipboard, and confidently marched right through the swinging metal crew-only doors at the back of the buffet. He assumed the authoritative clipboard would make him invisible to the staff. Instead, he immediately wandered straight into the main dishwashing pit during the absolute peak of the midday lunch rush. Have you ever noticed that acting like you belong somewhere only works until someone actually gives you a job? A highly stressed culinary supervisor, seeing a man in a safety vest standing idle during a massive plate backup, didn't ask for identification. He simply shoved a high-pressure industrial sink hose into Thomas's hands and pointed frantically at a rolling cart of dirty soup bowls. Paralyzed by the sudden chaos and entirely unwilling to admit he was trespassing, Thomas just started spraying. He stood in his khaki vacation shorts and sandals, sweating profusely in the humid galley, frantically washing leftover chowder off ceramic bowls for 25 minutes. He was only discovered when the executive chef walked by and noticed that the new maintenance inspector was wearing a tropical lanyard with a passenger room card, proudly dangling into a sink full of soapy water. Thomas didn't get to see the bridge or the engine room, but he was escorted out by security covered head to toe in white soapy foam, having successfully saved his money by voluntarily working a grueling half-hour shift in a floating commercial kitchen. 6. The onboard casino is a fascinating psychological environment because it operates on a completely different set of financial rules than the rest of the ship. A fact that Simon, a 28-year-old software engineer, thought he could exploit to completely eliminate his vacation bar tab. Simon had spent the first 2 days of his Mediterranean cruise appalled by the $14 price tag on a standard gin and tonic. But on the third evening, he overheard another passenger mention that the casino waitresses provided complimentary drinks to anyone who was actively gaming. To Simon, this was not a casual perk. It was a mathematical loophole waiting to be optimized. He calculated that if he could maintain the absolute lowest possible rate of financial risk while maximizing his beverage consumption, he could effectively force the casino to subsidize his entire evening. Around 8 o'clock, Simon walked onto the glowing, noisy casino floor and located a bank of older, unpopular slot machines tucked away in a quiet corner near the restrooms. He inserted a single $20 bill, sat down, and studied the digital interface until he figured out how to drop the wager to the absolute minimum, 1 single cent on 1 single line. He then pulled up the stopwatch application on his phone and began tracking the roaming patterns of the cocktail waitresses. He observed that a server passed his specific aisle roughly every 14 minutes. The rules of behavioral economics dictate that human beings will completely abandon all rational valuation of their time if they believe they are beating a corporate system. Simon spent the next 3 hours treating this penny slot machine like a complex hostage negotiation. He would sit perfectly still, waiting until he saw the waitress entering his visual periphery, and only then would he dramatically press the spin button, ensuring the machine's lights were flashing and the reels were spinning precisely when she walked by. He would even lean forward and point at the screen, manufacturing a look of intense concentration over a 1-cent bet. Over the course of 3 hours, he successfully ordered and consumed 5 gin and tonics. By midnight, Simon was incredibly intoxicated and monumentally smug. He had spent a total of 42 cents on 42 individual spins, and in his mind, he had successfully extracted $70 worth of premium liquor from the ship. He was a strategic genius. He decided it was finally time to cash out his remaining $19.58 and go to bed victorious. But as he reached up to press the cash out button, the combination of his profound intoxication and the gentle rocking of the ship caused his elbow to slip off the padded armrest. To catch his balance, Simon slammed his right hand down flat onto the machine's control deck, heavily striking the brightly illuminated Max Bet button. The machine instantly sprang to life, flashing aggressively as it deducted $5 for a maximum wager. Before Simon's alcohol-delayed reflexes could pull his hand away, his palm bounced and hit the button 3 more times in rapid succession. In less than 4 seconds, the machine evaporated his entire $20 balance, leaving him staring at a blinking zero. But the twist that elevated this scenario from a simple drunken mistake to a masterpiece of self-inflicted financial ruin was revealed the next morning. When Simon woke up and checked his cruise account on the cabin television, he discovered an additional $70 charge from the casino bar. He marched down to guest services, nursing a massive headache, to furiously argue that players drinking at the slot machines were supposed to receive complimentary beverages. The desk agent calmly typed his cabin number into the computer, looked up, and politely informed him that while American cruise itineraries often feature free casino drinks, they were currently sailing on a European itinerary out of Barcelona, where casino beverages are strictly charged at full menu price. The waitress hadn't been giving him free drinks because he was spinning the reels. She was happily bringing him cocktails because his room card was inserted into the machine, which automatically authorized every single purchase to his folio. Simon had spent 3 hours manually spinning pennies to look busy, accidentally slammed away his $20 bill in 4 seconds, and paid full retail price for every single drink, successfully executing a brilliant mathematical scheme that cost him almost $100 to sit in a smoky corner by himself. 7. on a 14-night Mediterranean sailing. Celebrating a milestone event usually involves purchasing a customized dessert. The culinary department offers a beautifully crafted, freshly baked anniversary cake for the entirely standard price of $35. Margaret, a retired real estate agent from Texas, was celebrating her 40th wedding anniversary with her husband, Charles. However, she viewed this basic bakery fee not as a convenience, but as a manipulative emotional shakedown. She firmly believed that since she had already paid for a cruise ticket, all celebratory calories should be structurally included. There is a unique subcategory of cruiser who operates under the absolute delusion that if individual ingredients are available for free, the professional labor required to assemble them into a masterpiece must also be complimentary by default. Refusing to be financially extorted by the pastry chef, Margaret decided to manufacture her own multi-tiered cake entirely from free buffet components. During the morning breakfast service, she executed a highly calculated extraction. She filled 3 large plates with exactly 24 complimentary buttermilk pancakes, scooped a massive soup bowl full of whipped cream cheese, and secured 2 entire jars of strawberry marmalade. She smuggled this heavy carbohydrate inventory back to her cabin and spent the afternoon acting as a rogue pastry architect. Using the plastic ice bucket as a structural mold, she stacked the cold, rubbery pancakes, cementing them together with thick layers of cream cheese and fruit spread, creating a deeply unstable 8-inch tower. By the time their evening dinner reservation arrived, the pancake cake had absorbed the moisture and morphed into a dense, weeping gelatinous cylinder. But Margaret did not intend to eat this in the privacy of her room. She carried the heavy, leaking plastic container down to the elegant main dining room, surrounded by guests in formal attire. She confidently flagged down the maitre d', handed him the soggy Tupperware, and demanded that the culinary staff transfer her creation onto a silver serving platter, insert a complimentary sparkler, and deploy a team of 5 waiters to sing a celebratory song at her table. The maitre d', displaying the kind of stoic composure usually reserved for royal guards, simply stared at the cold, pink-oozing tower of breakfast food. He politely explained that strict maritime health and safety regulations absolutely prohibited the kitchen staff from handling unrefrigerated passenger-constructed dairy products behind the scenes in the commercial galley. Margaret was profoundly offended. She marched straight to the guest services desk, heavily gripping her Tupperware, to formally demand a $35 onboard credit. She argued with absolute sincerity that since the waitstaff refused to provide a silver platter and a musical performance for her improvised pancake stack, the cruise line had maliciously sabotaged her romantic milestone. 8. The self-serve laundromat on Deck 7 provides industrial washers and dryers for passenger use, along with a vending machine that dispenses small, single-use boxes of high-efficiency laundry detergent for $2. Joanne, a fiercely frugal solo traveler, viewed the detergent fee as a predatory trap. She reasoned that soap was fundamentally just soap, and since her cabin bathroom featured a complimentary wall-mounted dispenser of dual-purpose hair and body wash, she already possessed an unlimited supply of free cleaning chemicals. Armed with an empty plastic water bottle, Joanne stood in her shower and pumped the dispenser 45 times, harvesting a thick, blue, ocean-scented gel. She then marched down the corridor to the laundromat, loaded her clothes, poured the entire bottle of body wash into the top tray, and confidently started a heavy-duty cycle. What Joanne failed to understand is the critical chemical distinction between high-efficiency laundry detergent, which is engineered to produce zero bubbles, and cheap shower gel, which is formulated to intensely foam upon contact with moving water. Within 6 minutes, the spinning drum became a high-powered lathering centrifuge. The foam expanded so rapidly that it breached the rubber seals of the glass door, oozing out like a slow-moving, heavily perfumed glacier. By the time the facility's manager was called, the foam was 3 feet deep inside the laundry room and was steadily creeping out into the passenger hallway, silently engulfing the geometric carpet pattern. When confronted, Joanne did not apologize for initiating a localized chemical incident. Instead, she demanded that the cruise line dry clean her clothes for free, arguing that their washing machines were clearly defective and prone to unprovoked foaming. 9. The Deck 12 Fitness Center offers dozens of complimentary exercise machines, but specialty fitness classes like Sunrise Pilates are held in a private, soundproofed studio and cost $20 to attend. Barbara, a retired high school administrator, decided that putting a price tag on physical wellness was a moral failure on the part of the cruise line. She wanted to take the Pilates class, but she absolutely refused to pay the cover charge. Noting that the private studio featured a massive floor-to-ceiling glass wall that faced the main public gym, Barbara devised a strategy to absorb the premium experience entirely through visual espionage. 10 minutes before the class began, she dragged a thick, vinyl-covered pool lounger cushion into the main gym and positioned it directly on the other side of the glass, placing herself front and center, just inches away from the paying participants. Because the studio was soundproofed and the instructor was wearing a wireless microphone, Barbara could not hear any of the verbal breathing cues or transition instructions. She was forced to operate on a 2-second visual delay, frantically trying to lip-read the instructor while mirroring the movements of the women inside. The group dynamics of a fitness class rely entirely on synchronized rhythm, and having a woman pressing her face against the glass while abruptly flailing into yoga poses completely derailed the focus of the paying customers. When the class transitioned into a complex, one-legged balancing pose, Barbara stared intensely through the reflection, misjudged her center of gravity, and completely lost her footing on the slippery vinyl pool cushion. She tipped backward in spectacular slow motion, crashing directly into a row of stationary bicycles and knocking over a tall, pyramid-shaped display of complimentary rolled hand towels. The instructor eventually had to pause the music and step outside to gently ask her to relocate. Barbara stood up, brushed off her leggings, and marched straight to the gym manager's desk, demanding a $20 onboard credit to compensate her for her ruined spiritual alignment, firmly blaming the ship for making the studio glass far too reflective for a proper workout. 10. On a 7-night Alaskan cruise, the captain's formal night is a highly anticipated event where passengers dress in elegant evening wear to enjoy a premium lobster dinner in the main dining room. For those who do not wish to pack a bulky suit, the ship's onboard boutique offers a completely standard tuxedo rental service for $85. To Walter, a retired postal worker from Ohio, this rental fee was an absolute insult to his constitutional freedom of wardrobe. Walter had packed exactly 2 pairs of pants for the entire week: beige cargo shorts and heavily faded black athletic track pants. He wanted to eat the complimentary lobster, but he absolutely refused to pay a corporate rental fee just to meet the dress code. Human beings will gladly submit themselves to immense public humiliation, provided they firmly believe they are successfully hacking a corporate policy. Rather than simply eating at the casual buffet, Walter decided to manufacture his own formal wear, using items purchased at a portside hardware store. He laid his faded black track pants flat on the cabin bed and meticulously applied 2 long strips of glossy black electrical tape down the outer seams, attempting to simulate the classic silk side stripe of a tailored tuxedo trouser. For his upper half, he put on a plain white undershirt and used the same black electrical tape to fashion a crude, geometric bow tie, sticking it directly onto his chest. He completed the ensemble by using a stapler to attach 2 paper cocktail napkins to his wrists to simulate French cuffs. When Walter proudly marched up to the entrance of the main dining room, the maitre d' was rendered completely speechless. Walter was standing in the busy foyer, smelling heavily of rubber adhesive, with his electrical tape beginning to peel off his knees in the warm, ambient humidity of the ship. When the maitre d' politely informed him that adhesive neckwear and athletic pants did not meet the structural definition of formal attire, Walter became deeply offended. He pointed furiously at the glossy tape on his legs, arguing with total sincerity that his trousers now featured the mandatory contrasting side stripe required of high-end evening wear. He spent 20 minutes debating the legal definition of a tuxedo with the dining room staff before finally storming off to guest services. He demanded an $85 onboard credit, arguing that since his homemade suit was functionally identical to the rental inventory, he had saved the ship wear and tear on their garments, and therefore he was entitled to the cash equivalent of the rental fee. 11. The daily onboard bingo tournament is a massive revenue generator with a basic paper card pack costing roughly $30. To Patricia, a 65-year-old retired librarian, paying $30 to participate in a game of pure statistical chance was an unacceptable financial risk. She firmly believed that the essence of bingo belonged to the public, not the corporation. Refusing to purchase a legitimate ticket, she decided to participate in the acoustic atmosphere of the game entirely for free. Armed with a standard blue pen and a complimentary beverage napkin from the lobby bar, Patricia sat in the very back row of the theater and meticulously drew her own 5x5 grid, filling it with random numbers. For an hour, she sat in the shadows, intensely crossing off squares as the cruise director called them from the stage. The situation reached its absolute pinnacle of absurdity when Patricia, defying all mathematical probability, actually completed a diagonal line on her homemade grid. Swept up in the adrenaline of the moment, she leaped out of her seat, screamed the winning phrase at the top of her lungs, and sprinted down the main aisle to claim the $500 jackpot. When the bewildered entertainment staff asked to scan the official barcode on her ticket to verify the win, Patricia proudly slapped her crumpled, ink-smeared cocktail napkin onto the podium. The staff politely explained that they could not pay out $500,000 to a passenger playing an entirely unregulated, imaginary game of her own invention. Patricia was deeply insulted. She marched straight to guest services to formally demand her prize money, arguing with total sincerity that since she had biologically experienced the exact same thrill of victory as the paying guests, the cruise line was legally obligated to honor her winning napkin. 12. The absolute pinnacle of onboard entitlement is the belief that purchasing the cheapest interior cabin naturally entitles you to the amenities of a $10,000 luxury suite. On a massive new megaship, the exclusive VIP lounge was located behind frosted glass doors on Deck 14. This private sanctuary offered complimentary premium cocktails, high-end appetizers, and a serene, uncrowded environment. Access was strictly controlled by a color-coded room key. Standard passengers had blue cards, while suite guests possessed highly distinct, reflective gold cards. Leonard, a 60-year-old retired software salesman, was assigned a standard blue card, but he was determined to consume the premium appetizers without paying the $1,000 cabin upgrade fee. Recognizing that the lounge was guarded only by a concierge who quickly glanced at the color of the cards as guests walked past, Leonard devised a highly elaborate forgery scheme. He began attending the complimentary morning scrapbooking and paper crafting classes hosted by the entertainment staff. For 3 consecutive days, Leonard sat among a group of pleasant elderly women, quietly hoarding specific supplies. He managed to secure a sheet of metallic gold foil paper, a precision cutting blade, and a stick of industrial craft glue. Back in his cabin, Leonard executed his heist. He meticulously cut the gold foil to perfectly match the dimensions of his blue room key, leaving only the magnetic strip exposed on the back. At a passing glance, it looked exactly like a VIP suite card. It is a known principle of social dynamics that infiltrators in high-status environments always give themselves away not through their appearance, but through their behavior. True suite guests are accustomed to luxury and consume it casually, while a man who has faked his way in will immediately attempt to maximize his caloric intake to justify his effort. Around 6 o'clock, Leonard put on his best sport coat, confidently strode up to the Deck 14 lounge, flashed his homemade gold card at the concierge, and walked right in. For the first 20 minutes, he was in absolute paradise. He filled a small ceramic plate with an absurd amount of prosciutto-wrapped asparagus, ordered a premium single malt scotch, and entirely convinced himself he was a tactical genius. But his fatal flaw was a complete misunderstanding of how modern maritime accounting works. When the bartender handed him his second glass of scotch, he politely held out a handheld digital terminal and asked Leonard to tap his card to log the complimentary beverage for inventory purposes. Leonard panicked. He knew that if he tapped the card, the system would immediately flag him as an interior cabin guest. In a moment of sheer desperation to avoid the scanner, Leonard loudly claimed that his card was currently demagnetized from sitting too close to his cell phone. The bartender, highly trained in guest services, simply smiled, took the card from Leonard's hand, and stated he would manually slide it into the chip reader to verify the account. As the bartender firmly shoved the card into the slot, the tight friction of the machine instantly caught the edge of Leonard's homemade gold foil. The thick craft glue and metallic paper crumpled, peeled backward, and wedged directly into the sensitive internal mechanisms of the card reader. The machine let out a sharp beep and completely died, trapping the card inside with a massive wad of gold paper sticking out of the top. The twist that elevated this from a simple trespassing incident to a masterpiece of audacity was Leonard's reaction to being caught. As the lounge manager and two security officers arrived to investigate the broken terminal, they pulled up his photo on the computer and confirmed he was not a suite guest. Instead of apologizing for breaking a $2,000 piece of point-of-sale hardware and stealing premium food, Leonard went on the offensive. He marched straight to the guest services desk and formally demanded that the cruise line compensate him for the destruction of his custom protective card sleeve. He argued with unwavering confidence that the bartender had used excessive force, and therefore the ship owed him $20 for the ruined crafting supplies, completely ignoring the fact that he was currently holding a half-eaten plate of stolen prosciutto. The ship quietly added a $200 equipment repair fee to his final statement. What these cases ultimately reveal is how a cruise completely distorts our perception of value. People will trade hours of their life just to hoard buffet milk. I want to know, which was worse, the man pretending to be a dishwasher or the fake gold card? Tell me below. If you want to understand the strange psychology of how people behave at sea, hit subscribe for more behavioral deep dives.